in which we see a pair of severed hands delivered to two unsuspecting individuals. Hello Tandem fandom, and welcome back to another Super Sleuth case file review here on the Tandem YouTube channel. If you have missed these previously, these are monthly reviews of our Thrills and Chills case files, the book club which happens on a monthly basis, celebrating the Thomas and Mercer or Amazon published titles of that month. So this month we have been reading Play with Fire by TM Payne. And to dive straight into this video, we're going to whiz over to an interview that I had the pleasure of doing with our lovely thriller girly, Francesca. Now, I was a little bit nervous going into this book with Francesca because she reportedly doesn't like police procedurals. But, spoiler, she loved it. She even compared this book to the best police procedural since Claire McIntosh's I Let You Go. Let's just let that resonate for a minute and roll the tape with Francesca. Welcome back. Welcome to another Thrills and Chills case file. And of course, I have got Francesca with me. So cheers, Francesca.
Yeah.
And this week we are discussing Play with Fire by TM Payne. This was a brand new author to me, brand new book to me. So I went back and I read books 1 and 2 in the series. Play with Fire is number 3. And Francesca, you have just read number 3.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested to hear how you read it as a standalone and how I read it as part of the series.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe let's start with the fact that you don't love a police procedural.
I don't typically love a police procedural. No, I feel like there is so much more to a story than looking at it from a detective point of view, typically. It wouldn't be like my go-to pick. However, I have read some good police procedural. I'm not like a complete hater, just has to be written right and written well.
So imagine, readers, imagine my nervousness when I send Francesca this police procedural going, I hope that you like it. Spoiler, I think she did.
Spoiler, I did like it.
Yeah!
Lexi was there like nail biting. Is she gonna like it? Is she gonna like it?
I was like, texting her every few days going, how do you feel? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Question
Any
mark.
updates? Any updates? What do you think of our female main character?
What do you think of our female main character? Because I've got feelings about Sheridan.
I really, really loved her. I think she is a fabulous, well-rounded, strong female main character to lead this series, and I absolutely loved the dynamics of her with working with everyone else at the police station. Having a second in command who was also female was a point of view that we don't typically get in these books. She was also a lesbian, so her and her girlfriend lived together at home, and I feel like these female dynamics just really work to build her as a character.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love that her being a woman wasn't necessarily ever a part of anything. Like her being a woman and her being a lesbian never comes up as like a huge part of who she is. Like nobody ever says, oh, this is Sheridan. She's our woman detective and she's also a lesbian. It's just who she is.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there is definitely a fine line there that some authors may potentially not know how to work with those boundaries. But yeah, as you say, she definitely was a woman in her own right. She was a very strong female main character, and that wasn't all she was.
And I think what I also really loved about this book that although Sheridan's sexuality isn't ever part of the main storyline, what it is very good queer representation within crime and thriller fiction, which I think we've talked about before. It just doesn't happen. Like there are maybe 1 or 2 books that I can think of that have really positive queer rep.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the fact that it was almost as it should be, so normalized, her going home to her girlfriend and her girlfriend being really supportive and witnessing a really healthy relationship that those characters have, I think it's almost like you're passing through so many boundaries. And it's one of those things that's exactly how it should be represented in fiction, but more often than not, it isn't. It's sort of either a that's everything they are type character, or it's written really in a really toxic manner.
Some of those scenes where Sheridan comes home from work to Sam, her girlfriend, and Joni, Sam's best friend, is there, and then Anna comes over for like takeout and a bottle of wine. Those are some of my favorite scenes because that
Absolutely.
feels like very healthy decompression after a very intense day out solving crimes.
Yeah, and I feel like when her and Anna are, so when Sheridan and Anna are called out on jobs and last minute, and it's just a really healthy dynamic with Sam being the girlfriend being really supportive
Mm-hmm.
of that instead of being like, oh, you're never at home and et cetera, et cetera. Those were some of my thoughts that I had definitely while reading it. And at one point during the book, I started to suspect Sam of some of the goings on. I was like, she's been a little bit too quiet. And then I was immediately like, no, no, Francesca, we're not doing this.
You know what that is?
We love
That's
her.
misogyny from other crime fiction
So true.
teaching you not to trust the nice, quiet girlfriend.
So true. So true.
But you're so right. There are so many things that set Sheridan as a detective apart from other quote unquote detective tropes.
Mhm.
Like, yes, she has a history. Yes, she has some kind of mystery going on in her past. But and as I touch on with Tina in the kind of companion podcast to this book, there is never a scene where Sheridan gets home and drinks a glass of whiskey in the dark and broods about how terrible everything is. Like, she's got a a quite a healthy relationship with alcohol. She's got her own problems, so there isn't that like brooding, overcooked detective trope that we see so often in fiction.
Yeah. Also interesting that you mentioned the alcohol because when our female character was coming home and having a glass of wine, I began to feel a bit like, oh, interesting, maybe there's going to be some sort of alcohol dependence in the
Mm,
story. And then the fact that they would come home, they talked about wine a lot at home, I felt, and I wasn't sure
hmm.
really what the thinking was behind that, but I did quite like how it was a we'll share a bottle, so they'd have one glass each, and it wasn't like a we're going to drink our sorrows away. It was like a we're going to have time, we're going to talk about what's been going on, and just have a glass of wine with that, which I thought was again a really good representation from the author.
Yeah, it felt very healthy. Tina and I joke about the amount of wine consumed in this book in the podcast. But to your point, I think you are exactly right. It is a social decompressing tool. It's never a crutch, which is so often seen. I feel like a 50-year-old male white detective with a bottle of whiskey in the bottom drawer of his desk. Like, it's the
Yeah.
furthest thing from that, which I think is part of the reason why I love this book so much.
It's just it takes all the traditional classic crime thriller tropes and kind of just flips them all on their head. So it felt like one on its own for me.
So let's also talk about the setting. So Tina lives in the Wirral and she set the book in Liverpool. And this is a lot closer to you than this is to me. Have
Mhm.
you spent time in Liverpool or no?
Yeah, yeah, I've spent time in Liverpool.
Okay.
Mainly just the city centre, not so much the
Hmm.
Wirral itself. There's something really realistic about having a book set close to where you live or like in areas that you know because it gives an extra level of like reality. Like this could be happening there right now. Interestingly, Claire McIntosh writes one of her detective series on the book on the English-Welsh border, and I really like that because obviously, again, we're close to the Wirral, and it's an area that I kind of know well enough. So I'm always kind of thinking, oh, and they mention like the Cheshire Constabulary, and I'm kind of like, oh, maybe that's my like local area, but it gives another level of not quite sure what, something special though.
Yeah. I think because Tina has lived and worked in the criminal justice system and now in the setting in which she's written this book, it is just another element of reality that rings
Absolutely.
so true. That being said about settings, I also love when an author will write a fictional town within a city that everybody knows.
Hmm.
Like, I quite like when authors play with that element of going, you sort of know where this is, but it is fictional. Tina describes her book that she said that she's been very humbled to hear the descriptions that she is seeing her book described as Happy Valley, the TV show, and also Unforgotten, the TV show. I haven't seen Happy Valley, but I have seen Unforgotten. And what I will say is that I do understand this description, this kind of comparison. For me, Unforgotten and The Play with Fire, the Sheridan Holler series, they both sit in a space where I trust these detectives. It feels very safe. I know I'm in very good hands. And I know that regardless of what, the main plot of each individual book is, I know that Sheridan and Anna and the team back at the Nick, it all feels like a little bit coming home to a story that you know and love. Because I have read books 1, 2, and 3, it feels like I completely trust this team. Did
Mhm.
you get that from reading just one of the books?
I feel like I did in a way. I feel like these characters are so well written, and the fact that there was nods to the past. So, for example, when Sheridan and Sam met was obviously not something that happened in the third book, but there was kind of a small catch you up couple of sentences on how they met, which was maybe explained by another character or something like really organic, but to the point where you didn't feel that you needed to read the first two. So I think it did work really well as a standalone, but I would have liked to have read the first two to have that same coming home feeling, I think,
Hmm.
that kind of reliability almost on these characters.
I quite like Tina's ability to catch you up in those few sentences. Like she's also very good at the end of a book of doing like a wrap up
Yeah.
couple of paragraphs, like, and now here we are with all of our strings tied up, or not tied up as some elements are.
Yeah, I particularly like the epilogue in this book. It gave you an update on literally every single character, so you couldn't really go wrong in terms of like you're thinking, oh, I wonder what happened to them. No, no, you know, because the author's going to tell you, and I really like that tied with a bow feeling, and then it almost would make me feel more confident going into like book four to know where we
Hmm.
stand and the kind of the current, yeah, the current standings at the start of it.
I really love this format that Tina seems to be like championing. It feels like prologue is always really big, explosive, no pun intended. It always seems very dramatic, high stakes, high energy. And then we get into the main body of the novel where we are with Sheridan and Anna figuring out, trying to put the pieces together, eventually coming to some kind of conclusion, figuring out how on earth the prologue makes sense with the main crime that we've been ensconced in, and then this really neat epilogue which ties everything back up together. That
Yeah.
feels like such a winner for Tina.
A huge fan of that sort of format as well, of just
Mm,
across books. And yeah, that really worked for me. And also within the main body of the novel, as you say, I particularly enjoyed the fact that we almost were lured into a false sense of security around the 80% mark, that everything was
mm.
nicely tied up. We'd worked out who'd done it. And I was thinking, hang on a minute, we've still got like 50 pages to go. Like, what is going to happen? And that was brilliant because as soon as that happened earlier in the book, I knew that the last almost like 20% was going to be amazing. Like, I had no doubts. I just read that literally in one go because I really couldn't put the last bit down because there was this weird lack of security and you thought you knew, but you didn't. And there was a good chunk of the book to like be able to explore this.
You're so right. I feel like you and I agree on so many points. And I feel like as seasoned crime readers, you know that either when you're holding the book in your hands and you can feel how much of a book is left, or when you're reading it on your Kindle and it says along the bottom of the screen, 80% finished or whatever, you're like, well, hang on a second. Something is afoot here. There's
Mm,
something more to come.
yeah. Wonder what else is going to go down.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that opening
Mhm.
because for reference for you, because I know that you don't know this,
Yeah.
each of Tina's books starts with a prologue that makes you go, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
what? And I think it's so clever because it hooks you instantly.
Completely agree. I feel like this is something that the best crime and thriller authors at the moment are doing, and it is nailing the prologue and making it so that you don't also know bits that are happening. It's a very ambiguous prologue, but equally as explosive.
Yeah. So in book 2,
Mm.
in the prologue, we meet a woman who is having a drink on a rooftop bar, and she
Mhm.
can see another couple across the rooftop also having a drink. Um, and she's kind of flirting, but not flirting with the man in the couple from a distance. And then all of a sudden, she stands up, walks across the rooftop bar, and launches herself off the roof.
Now that
And
sounds like
then,
a book I want to read.
right? And then you get into the rest of the book and you
Yeah,
figure out who this woman was. Why was she on the roof? What's going on here? It's kind of like what I'm billing now as like a TM Payne trait.
yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, cool, sold. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, huge fan of that. I think that's one of the reasons that added to this book to make it slightly more than a police procedural for me as well, because as you say, typically this area of thrillers I don't tend to reach for, but having an opening like that and having like the wonderful epilogue that we talked about is kind of adding another layer to it that's making it even more enjoyable.
I feel like some authors might be able to write an excellent prologue that really grips me, but then will let me down in the book.
Yeah.
Whereas that is never, ever a concern with Tina. Out of the 3 books that I've read, and I'm already bugging Tina for book 4, I'm like, excuse me, November can't come fast enough. I feel in very safe hands with Sheridan, but also in very safe hands with Tina. I feel like this is a story that I'm going to enjoy coming back to again
Yeah.
and again. So if you were going to compare this book to any that you've read or any on your shelves, and if you were going to recommend it to a specific audience, who would that be?
I would definitely recommend this book specifically and the Sheridan series to fans of Claire Mackintosh, particularly anyone who was a fan of The Last Party and then her 2 next books in this series, Game of Lies and Other People's Houses. It's a very similar strong female detective lead, and there's a little bit more to the story than just police procedural, but all of Claire Mackintosh's books kind of give the similar vibes to TM Payne's books as well. So I would recommend this author probably as a whole. And then also, I think this is a little bit of a curveball. Our female main character in this is not a detective, but she is like a forensic profiler. So in The Institution by Helen Fields, we have a woman that goes into like a locked prison hospital to find a missing baby, and it's giving the same vibe, the same really good female character that you trust and a female main character that makes her own decisions and is really independent in what she's doing, probably to a fault. But this author's writing also has a very similar vibe to Tina's books as well.
Good shouts. Okay, I've obviously read Claire Mack and I loved those ones, but I might have to pick up the Helen Field one. So my suggestions would be if you haven't read the Angelica Henley series, so this is by Nadine Matheson. First book is The Jigsaw Man.
Oh,
The reason
yes.
that I'm suggesting these books is because not only do we have a great detective duo, so we've got Inspector Henley, who is our female lead. She's also a brilliant representation of a Black British Caribbean woman. And we have her partner, who is Samil Ramuta, and their kind of partnership is really interesting. But also, the book is very, for me, location specific.
Mm.
It's set in Greenwich. There have been lots of cuts to the crime team. So she is now the only team running in her particular building. And it feels like a bit similar to you when you're like, oh, I know that place. I know that place. Like, I feel like I know this place.
Yeah.
Like Angelica Henley was born in Southeast London, the space I know very well. So that's really interesting for me. So if you're looking for a location specific, brilliant detective duo, then I would definitely recommend that one. And then my other favorite detective duo series that I just cannot stop recommending at the moment is the DCI Cat Frank and Aid Locke series by Joe Callahan. So book 1 is In the Blink of an Eye, then you've got Leave No Trace and Human Remains. Such good books, detective duos, but with an edge and a complete novelty in crime fiction that you will be blown away by.
Mm. Interesting. I've not read either of those authors, so looks like a
Okay,
couple.
well, get them on your list.
Yeah. Yes, so
Hey, we are nothing if we are not full of thriller recommendations.
absolutely. We live to serve.
Okay, so I think it might be one line review time. This is Play with Fire. This is the third brilliant installment in the Sheridan Holler series, which has another gripping case in which we see a pair of severed hands delivered to 2 unsuspecting individuals, with so many switchbacks, twists and turns, and of course, TM Payne's perfect prologue. Your turn.
Wonderful. I do feel like that was more than one line though, Lexi.
Is it, or is it just commas? And I'm being quite loose with my
Say
punctuation.
it's commas. We'll say it's commas.
Great.
So, Play with Fire is a police procedural meets strong female main character in this twisty tale following a missing woman and 2 severed hands.
We're all about the severed
Yeah.
hands. I don't think there is enough fiction about severed hands.
Severed hand representation, that's what I'm claiming.
That's the next reel for your Instagram. How many books can I recommend with severed limbs in them?
Top 5 thriller book recommendations with severed limbs.
Right. And on that note, that has been another Super Sleuth case file with Francesca Pavis. Francesca, our thriller girly. So with that, we'll see you next month.
We'll see you next month. Cheers.
So now that you've heard Francesca and I wax lyrical about how much we love this book and how much I loved this whole series, this is book 3 in the series, I can't wait to introduce you to TM Payne. So here is Tina.
Okay, so Tina, welcome to our YouTube channel. We have been chatting up a storm over the past month on Play with Fire, on blog posts and podcasts and all kinds of lovely stuff, which if you're watching will be linked in the description below. But Tina, thank you so much for joining me yet again.
Thank you for having me back. I thought maybe I'd outstayed my welcome a few times.
I have been trying to get rid of you, but I cannot shake you.
Okay, I'm here. I'm like a barnacle on your wherever barnacles.
Rock, and the underside of a rock. That's what you're.
Yes, that's what I'm like. You just can't get rid. But yeah, but no, thank you for having me back.
You're welcome. Honestly, these readers who are currently reading Play with Fire cannot get enough of you.
Wow. I've seen some of the comments, I have to say, on the sort of the DM thing or whatever you call it. And it never gets old. You know, these are new readers, aren't they? I think to the series.
Mm-hmm.
Just to hear them saying, "Oh, I love Sheridan," or, you know, what's going on. And they're just so excited about it. And that makes me excited.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said the books will never be for everybody, and no one's books will ever be for everybody. There'll be people out there that don't like them, and that's absolutely fine. But so far, it just seems the whole group just love it, and I'm genuinely blown away by the comments. And I love all the little kind of clues that they're given, and how.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what's nice is that normally someone reads your whole book and then they give you a review.
Mm.
But this is different because I'm getting feedback as they get through the story.
Yeah.
So it's like they're at this point in the book and their thought process is, oh, I would like to speak to this character. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
a bit dodgy. I think she's a bit dodgy. So to get that feedback as they're going along is like gold dust. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm always learning. I'm always learning. Every writer, I think, is always learning how to, you know, put the twists in or just be a bit cleverer and things like that. So it's a great learning curve for me, but I'm loving it, and I'm delighted that they're enjoying it. And I'm going to stop talking about myself now. Next question.
Apologies, this interview is entirely going to be about you, just so you're aware.
Oh, okay. Oh, wish I prepared then.
No, like they are absolutely loving it. And what I will say is last night, so the readers are currently in the middle of their reading schedule. I say schedule, some of them have thrown the schedule to the wind and they're just racing through, which is fine. That's fine. I don't mind. Sign of a good book. But most readers should be about the kind of 65% mark as of last night. And one of my favorite things to do is just when something big has been revealed, we all stop, we put the books down, and then we have a theory chat.
Okay.
Where everybody gets into the DM group and they're like, I'd like to know more about so-and-so because I think he's well dodgy. Oh, and I think that person is this person's long lost sister, and this person, maybe they're cousins. And I have obviously read the book and I'm reading this chat just like, ha, 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 ha.
I love it.
Just like chattering away. But honestly, they are gripping this book with so much enthusiasm. I'm so glad because honestly, it's a dream. Sheridan Holler series, top notch.
Wow, thank you so much. I can't say anything other than I'm literally, and I keep using this term, and I must think of a new one, like blown away, but that's the only way I can describe it.
Well, you know what? That's actually a great segue. So let us talk about the first thing that all of these readers read. The first thing that they kind of were in the DM groups shouting about. Let's talk about that perfect prologue. So this is becoming a bit of a TM Payne tactic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You write a very explosive, pun unintended prologue, and then you tell us the story of how we got there. When did you land that was going to be your kind of narrative arc of choice?
I obviously, when I wrote the first book, Long Time Dead, I did it in that one, and I'll tell you why I think I did it, because I've always been very honest and said I have not read enough books in my life. Okay, I just haven't. I am now reading books, but I haven't in the past. But when I did pick up a book, if within the first sort of 10 or 20 pages it was a slow burner and nothing really kind of grabbed me, I would probably put it down. So I thought I would write a book where the beginning was something I would like to read.
Yeah.
So, you know, so like I say, that the prologue in Long Time Dead was the big supermarket, you know, trolley and Gerald the giraffe. People are going to go, what?
What? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a nice mother and daughter, and they're going Christmas shopping, and it's all very nice atmosphere, and then suddenly, bang, something happens. Because, like I say, if I read a book with that prologue and then it moved, which in Long Time Dead, it then moves away from that particular scene. So we move 7 years later. But I will always obviously come back to the prologue. But I got some of the prologue ideas many years ago. I did a writing course. It was only a night course for like once a week. And it was fine. I enjoyed it. I didn't learn a huge amount from it. And that sounds really pompous, and people, please don't hate me. It's just, it wasn't really the right course for me. But in the course, we had to write little short stories, or like a couple of pages for something for our homework. So I had all these little short stories written down. And when I met Susie, and we obviously started the Sheridan Holler series and in Play with Fire, that scene, that first scene with the woman with the pram, was a short story. It was like 2 pages or whatever. And Susie read it and said, you've got to use this in one of your books because it is so boom. That was a good word, boom.
That's good.
So she said, please use it in the third book. And the story for the third book was nothing to do with, in my head, to do with that prologue. So I wrote the prologue out and I tweaked it a little bit and then started writing Play with Fire. And then I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get back to that prologue? And obviously I'm a spoiler queen, so I'm not going to say anything, but I know, zip. But I think it worked when people, I'm getting some really good comments about that prologue, you know, wow, and so I'm glad I used it, and it's just a way of figuring out. But yeah, I will always have that prologue, and I know some people hate them, but it's my way of hopefully catching, you know, hooking the reader and them saying, I love the prologue, I want to read on, and I want to know where you're now going and how you get back to that.
You know what? You didn't mention it, but my favorite prologue out of the 3 might actually be This Ends Now.
Okay. Yes.
Wait, let me make sure I'm talking about the right one. I am, yes.
With the rest.
The fact that this woman is at the restaurant and then she does what she does.
Yeah.
I was like, sorry, hang on, clear my day. Cancel my meetings, hold my messages.
Okay. Wow.
I need to read the rest of this. And as we've said, Play with Fire follows the exact same narrative structure, which I now love, that is becoming part of the, you know, the TM Payne package, what we know and we love and we feel safe in with you.
It comes quite naturally to me now. I mean, I'm now writing book 5. So I have got this kind of a bit of a system, I suppose, in my head where I love to write a prologue. I find them fairly straightforward to write. I'm trying to come up with more and more shocky waves. Is that even a word?
Shocky waves. Wow. Somebody needs to like embroider that on a pillow. That's not a word.
What does that mean? But shock wave. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway.
Shocking ways.
That's the one. Shocking waves. Shocking ways to make the reader go, wow, I didn't see that coming. I mean, they're probably going to know that prologue isn't just going to be a nice little twee intro. They're going to start to know that every time you open a TM Payne book, it's going to be, oh, okay, a couple walking along the sand, arm in arm, and it's not going to end well for somebody. No. So yeah, it is a bit of a thing. And also I'm getting quite a lot of reviews coming in saying they like the fact that I do an epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
So I tie everything up, because
Yeah.
I think to tie everything up within the actual pages of the book in the story could be quite long-winded.
Yeah.
And I don't want the story to tail off and they go, okay, so she's explaining everything. So I kind of do it. I like it when I watch a film and then the film ends and you go, oh my God. And you think, well, hang on a minute, what happened to him? Or did they go off into the sunset together, or did that happen? So, and I like seeing that on the screen. So I will always put an epilogue in there as well, and make sure that the readers don't ever finish one of my books and go, yeah, she didn't tell us what happened to him. You know, she's cheated us, as it were, and I'll never do that. The
It
only
makes
thing
for such a satisfying reading experience.
Yeah, I think so. You can put that book down and you know what's happened. You know, in each
Mm-hmm.
Holler book, the story, the crime that she's investigating will always be different.
Yeah.
You know, you'll always have your recurring characters, obviously, because it's a series. But yeah, the stories will always be different, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
just better and better if I live long enough to keep writing these stories.
Well, the
Like,
next one's out in November. Let's hope that you make it to November at least.
I know, and it's mad. Did I tell you it's actually out at the moment? This could change, but at the moment it's actually out on my birthday. It's booked for Count the Dead, it's called, and it's out on the 1st of November.
That'll make for a launch party to remember.
Oh my gosh, I'm literally not recovered from the last one. It's only, it feels like however long ago, but it's only a week ago. So yeah, and that was just a pure coincidence with the publisher when she emailed me, Vic Haslam, and said, we've got the publication date. And I was like, oh my God. And then she sent us the early book cover. I don't know how they do it. I don't know.
When we're done on this interview, please will you show me?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, definitely. I will. I absolutely love it.
So listen, not all authors could pull off the way that you do your prologue, but the beauty of you having pulled it off 3 times is that your readership now know that they trust you. They're in complete safe hands when reading a TM Payne book. And that is just doubled down even further by providing Sheridan and Anna. So Sheridan and Anna are our main characters, and we are in safe hands with them as well. You know, they are brilliant, reliable, resonant characters that usher you through this story. And in each book, we work towards solving a different crime.
Yeah.
And in Play with Fire, 2 severed hands are delivered to unsuspecting individuals. We're not obviously going to discuss the plot. I'm looking at you. Keep it zipped.
Yeah.
But how do you come up with that concept? Like, how do you go, okay, cool, it's going to be cut off limbs for this one?
Oh my God. I don't actually know what I do. I don't worry about my head, right? And the things I write.
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should actually. I don't know. I just try to come up with different ways. I mean, there are so many stories out there. There's thousands and thousands of crime fiction books, and I'm sure every story has been done before. It must have been. There's millions of them out there. So and because I've not been, and I will admit it, I've not been a huge reader up until kind of this started for me. I think I'm not sort of tainted by what everyone else has done. So but then I will say, Susie, my wife, is a massive crime fiction reader and always has been, sort of since the 90s. So I'm very, very, very blessed in that. And I will answer your question in a minute, because I know I've done that thing where I go off on one. But I will say to Susie, I'm thinking of doing this, and she'll say, oh, such and such did that, or that's been done a lot in books. So I'm not saying I'm completely unique. Of course I'm not. But she will say, yeah, it's been done quite a lot. So maybe you could do that. But how about this? So it'd be something she hasn't necessarily read before, or hasn't read in lots and lots of other crime fiction books. But going back to the actual question, I don't know. My mind is going constantly, I think.
Yeah.
Even when I've finished writing at the end of the day, Susan and I will sit down and I'll say, right, I've got this idea, I've got that idea, and we will talk. So when I go to bed, it takes me a little while to kind of switch off, not in a horrible way, my mind's going in a brilliant way, and I love what I do. I love that I'm now able to put all these ideas in my head that I've probably had ticking away there for many years. So to answer your question, I don't know. I've just got a very strange mind. But then maybe all crime fiction authors have, I don't know, just an imagination. And yeah.
You know, it's so strange. I spend a lot of my time talking to crime authors, which is the absolute dream. And they are the nicest people that you've ever met. They are always sweet and charming and lovely and light. And you can't help but wonder at the back of your brain, how on earth did you come up with the charred flesh of severed hands?
I know. Yeah, it's a worry, isn't it? But all the time, these lovely, fluffy, nice, kind, wonderful crime fiction authors talking to you, they're probably thinking, Lex has got really long hair. I could probably use that to strangle her with, so you wouldn't have a murder weapon.
Good. Okay. Well, it was nice talking to you,
Good tip sorted. No, I'm joking.
I was about to tell you a book where that does actually happen, but I won't because it's a spoiler.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
We're keeping it zipped on that front.
Okay.
Well, perfect. Okay. So the thing that I think is really important with most crime fiction is that quite a lot of readers want to know where you are on the like gore spectrum and where you are on the procedural spectrum.
Okay.
I feel like those are the two kind of like pillars when thinking about crime thrillers that people like a gauge on.
Okay.
And I would say that you're definitely within the procedural spectrum, because obviously we've got Sheridan and Anna, we are following them solve this case. But a conversation that I had with our super sleuth, Francesca, just before this one, explained that she is not a massive fan of police procedurals, but because this is so character-led and it's so heart-led that it works. It appeals to that mass audience. From the gore perspective, you dabble. You do dabble a little bit, but it's never, well, again, from my kind of like dark and wizened opinion, it's never too much.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we've got some severed hands, but the rest of the book is actually very, you know, it's more about the deft plot twists and all of these other elements.
Yeah.
I would never say you're you're not using a shock for a tactic. It's not like and now here's the burned flesh of this body.
Yeah. I will never be too graphic. I mean, yes, we are aware that there is a severed hand that has been burnt, is delivered to somebody. And I really won't want to give anything away, but that's kind of as far as that goes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a burnt severed hand. I don't do a great deal of description about, you know, any of that. I'm really desperately trying not to give anything away here. There was actually a scene in This Ends Now, in the second book in the series. There was because we know what the story's about, and again, sounds awful, I can't really say too much because it will give a lot of it away. But there's a couple of scenes in there, and I'm sure you've probably read a million books since then.
I think This Ends Now is actually my favourite of the three books.
Okay.
But so it's burned into my retinas.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's cool. But there's a couple of scenes in there that take place. I'm doing this cryptically, where Susie and I talked about being a little bit more graphic, and I wrote those scenes and then immediately ripped them up because I don't think it needed to be on the page. I think the reader there's enough there for the reader to go, oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I will never do that. I will never be overly graphic. I mean, This Ends Now, I think on some of the reviews, luckily people really loved it, but there have been possibly a couple of trigger warnings for people. And I don't want people to be put off by that. When I read that, I thought, gosh, really, is that how it's going to be sort of perceived? And it is what it is. But no, I will never do gore where someone is, you know, tearing off someone's head and sucking out their eyeballs, because that doesn't work. But I've got some I call them my gatekeepers.
Okay.
So Susie and I kind of write the books together. She comes up with some ideas, I come up with some ideas, I write them, she proofreads them and does all that. Then I have 5 people who I call my gatekeepers, who are a couple of friends and some family members who are brutally honest. They're not people that read the book and go, oh yeah, Tina, yeah, it's great. They'll read it and they'll go, loved it. However, that didn't make sense, or that was confusing, or whatever. And one of them is, one of my gatekeepers is Susie's sister, so my sister-in-law, who's just a little bit older than us. And I know that if I put anything gory in my books, she wouldn't sleep at night. So she's always in the back of my mind thinking, would Breeder be okay with this? And it doesn't stop me writing the sort of the heavy stuff. But yeah, so rest assured, I'll never do anything too gruesome. I just don't think I'd enjoy doing that anyway. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's almost more impactful, like you do with This Ends Now. You lead your readers to the darkness, to the trauma, to the issue, and you let them understand what's happening, rather than pages and pages of graphic detail, which becomes unnecessary.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't think I'd enjoy writing that. And I think if you don't enjoy writing something, if it doesn't feel right, then I'm not going to write it very well. If I like there's quite a lot of humour in the books, and it is a lot of it is police humour. And as you know, I spent 18 years in Norfolk Police, and I've always been in the criminal justice system and all that. So I know that kind of banter and that kind of humour happens because I've been a part of that. And when I write the scenes between like Hill Knowles and her neighbour Gloria, although that's not a police environment, but Hill is a high-ranking police officer, and she's obviously got her own things going on. But when I write those scenes with her and Gloria, my keyboard, because I literally write with like these two index. I'm not a multi, whatever you call it. Touch type, is it? They call it touch type.
Touch typist.
No, I don't do any of that. I'm literally dosh. But I type faster when I'm writing those funny scenes because I absolutely love writing the humorous side of it. And I hope I've got the balance right with the humor, because at the end of the day, it's a police procedural crime fiction. There's murders and there's bodies and there's investigations. But I think I've got just enough humor in there to give the reader a bit of a breather, but to see the real life, how police actually do talk to each other. So yeah, I think
100%. I think you've nailed that balance. And like you say, it's very indicative of reality. When you spend your life as a police officer, as a kind of on a homicide team, surrounded by the world's truly darkest things, you are going to go back to the office and make silly jokes about a vending machine or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's what gets you through your day.
Yeah. When I worked in domestic violence unit, we were quite a small team, because we're a little specialist team. And usually by the end of the week, you're all dealing with a heavy case, because a lot of us used to work together on a particular case, or we had our own cases. And I remember one day, one of the officers brought in a box of Tunnock's tea cakes. And it was a heavy day. It was a Friday or whatever it was. It'd been a heavy week, lots going on, lots of traumatic stuff going on with our victims. And I remember opening this Tunnock's tea cake, and I just bit the chocolate off the top. And I just thought, we kind of need a moment of stupidness, literally, in the office. So I just got the cake and I just literally boshed it all over my face and got all this white sticky cream and just left it there. And I turned to my colleagues and I was saying something about a job or whatever. And obviously it was hilarious. And then it became a bit of a thing, we do that. But none of the humour or the jokes we played in the office were ever pointed at a victim.
Of course not. Yeah.
And I don't want people to just forgive. Do you want to show a picture of me, the actual evidence?
Yes.
So this was me in the office. We'll leave it there. Sorry, Susie's just passed that to me. So yeah, that's what I used to do. I look a lot younger then. That was only a few years ago. God, I've aged.
It was only last year. Jesus.
But it was only last year.
It's stressful writing these books.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, the humour was never ever about the victims, and I want people to rest assured that it was never like that. But we did have to have that humour to get us through what was a really tough job. So yeah, that helped us. Tonics, tea cakes. If ever you feel stressed at work, bosh a tonics tea cake into your face and go and speak to your boss. Trust me, everyone's about to lose their job.
I'm not going to be able to eat a Tonics tea cake without thinking about this conversation.
No, you're not. I've ruined it, haven't I?
You have, but it's okay. I can't say Tonics tea cakes a whole lot of often, so
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Okay.
So what I would ask you to leave us with is if you could share one bit of information, or what do you want readers to know who maybe haven't jumped into the series yet? What do you want them to know about Sheridan and Anna?
Oh, okay. I want them to know that Sheridan is, I'd like them to know that she's a little bit, I think, different. And again, I'm very wary not to upset people here. Certainly, all this. Sheridan doesn't have this angst in her life where she's a high-ranking, she's a detective inspector, she's got a lot of responsibility. But when she goes home to a really good environment.
Yeah.
She's got her partner, Sam. They've been together a few years now. It works. Sam understands that Sheridan doesn't do a 9 to 5, and there'll be days when she doesn't come home because she's on a case. And Sam gets that, and Sam got that from the outset. So she knows, like I say, Sheridan might not come home, or she'll be late, or dinner's burnt. Sam always burns a dinner, but so I want them to know that Sheridan isn't a police officer character where she likes a glass of wine, but she's not an alcoholic with a drug problem who sits in the corner of a room rocking backwards and forwards because the case is getting to her. She's a very, very strong character, a strong person. She's funny, but her relationship with Anna, they are the very, very best of friends, even though Anna is keeping a secret from Sheridan, which, if people are new to the series or haven't read any of the books, Anna, throughout the series, that's been sorted now. But anyway, I'm so rubbish at this.
You're so scared of spoilers.
I so am scared of spoiling.
Anna deals with something that she is keeping from Sheridan.
Yeah, she does. She is, and she wants to tell Sheridan. But what I've tried to, can I say what it is? I don't think it's a spoiler really, because I think it's out there already, to be fair, and it's not going to spoil anything. Anna is a victim of domestic abuse, and again, that's not a huge part of the books at the moment. It's just that underlying ripple. In Long Time Dead, we understand there's problems. In this end now, it's getting a little bit worse, and then she throws him out and all this sort of stuff. But that's kind of bubbling under the surface. And the reason she doesn't tell Sheridan is because she still has this little bit of love for her ex-partner. And as I say, I've worked in domestic violence for 14 years. So without sounding pompous, I do know in that respect what I'm talking about. And I know that victims, you'll say, well, hang on, if he's hit you, why would you stay with him? Just leave. Well, that it doesn't work like that. And I wanted it to be realistic in that Anna is behaving like a victim of domestic abuse. Not all of them, but generally that's possibly how they behave. So she's keeping that from Sheridan. But I love their relationship. Their love for each other as mates and colleagues, I think works. I hope it works. Does that sound all right?
Yes, it sounds all right. And yes, can confirm it does work.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. I love writing the pair of them together.
We will wrap it up there, but readers, viewers, listeners, wherever you are, we also have a 4-part companion podcast available on all good podcast platforms. Wow. Okay, available on all good podcast platforms. So if you'd like to get a little bit more behind the scenes of TM Payne and hear a bit more about Tina's career and how that's kind of come forth on the page, then that is the option for you. It will be linked down below. And Tina, I'll say goodbye.
Oh, thank you so much. Cheers, Lex.
And last but not least, we will be sharing some reviews from our Sleuth read-alongers who take part in our crime read every single month.
I love this book. This was really fun.
A great police procedural, complex plot, lots of characters, and one where you'll change your mind about those characters every 5 minutes because you don't know who's good, who's bad, who's done it. Highly recommend. It's a great read.
This book was great because you never knew who done what. I have a book of theories. As always, I'm not a great sleuth. I never know who've done it.
The book's fast-paced, run by short, punchy chapters made it almost impossible to put down.
This book starts with quite a shocking prologue, and you can't tell the connection to the prologue until the last few pages.
The prologue's one of the best I've ever read, and it definitely hooks you in from the beginning. The pacing was spot on, creating that addictive just one more chapter feeling.
This was fantastic. This will keep you at the edge of your seat until the last page. So I truly recommend you read Play with Fire by TM Payne.
So just one last thing from me this time, team. This time for TM Payne's Play with Fire, we have produced a companion podcast, Talking to Tina, the tales behind TM Payne. You can find the links down below in the description, and I would absolutely love if you took a chance and listened to it. I had the pleasure of having so many brilliant discussions with Tina, figuring out how her 18 years worth of work in the criminal justice system have been transposed into her police procedural thriller series. If any of these books sound up your street, then this one is a 5-star from me, and I can't recommend it anymore. See you next month.